You wondering who will be diving into the stuffing less than 2 times? Or who will be eating more than 3 pieces of pie on Thanksgiving? Well, then you got to play the Pick 6 game from DraftKings. Your shot to turn a little cash into a lot. It's super simple to get started. First, download the DraftKings Pick 6 app, now available in Texas, California, and more. Then select between 2 or more players and choose if they'll have more or less than a certain stats, like yards or touchdowns, sacks, whatever. You choose if they're going to have more or less. And for the first time, Pick 6 players, check this out. New customers play $5. You get $50 in Pick 6 credits. Download the DraftKings Pick 6 app now and use the code BALLERS. That's the code BALLERS for new customers to play $5, get $50 in Pick 6 credits. Only on DraftKings Pick 6. The crown is yours. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER. Help is available for problem gambling. Call 888-789-7777 or visit ccpg.org in Connecticut. Must be 18 plus. Age and eligibility restrictions vary by jurisdiction. Pick 6 not available everywhere, including New York and Ontario. Void where prohibited. 1 per new customer. Bonus bets awarded as non-withdrawable Pick 6 credits that expire in 30 days. Limited time offers. See terms at pick6.draftkings.com/promos.
The DFS Studio is brought to you by DraftKings. Welcome to the Fantasy Footballers DFS and Betting Podcast with your hosts, Kyle Borganoni and Matthew Betz.
Welcome in. It's Tuesday, December 31st. I almost forgot what the date was. The Fantasy Footballers DFS and Betting Podcast. I'm your host, Kyle Borganoni, and I am joined, as always, by Matthew, the 2024 version of Betz.
I'm really glad it's not Friday, because if it was Friday and we were recording this show, I would be so unprepared to talk about this slate, if that's the case. Welcome to Week 18, everybody. We're going to do our best on today's show to give a lay of the land, but quite frankly, a lot of what we say on a Tuesday, or if you're listening on a Wednesday, might be irrelevant come Friday or Saturday, because Week 18 is the best, man. I love this week because if you're really plugged into kind of what's going on, team motivation levels, some player contract incentives, how many snaps people are going to play, like Josh Allen. Is it a drive? Is it 2 drives? Is it a quarter? Like, all of that goes into projections. But on a week like this, where there's so many moving parts, it's more of a vibes-based week, in my opinion, to some degree. I mean, yes, projections matter, but there's so much projection volatility this week that if you prefer to hand build, if you like to have takes different than the market, it's a really fun week for tournaments. So off the bat, I think I'm going to play a little bit less cash than usual this week and focus on tournaments.
I 100% with you, and I'll just say it stresses me out on a Tuesday recording this to think about projections this week, because I don't know how much some of these players are going to play. I also think that there are things that happen in the earlier games that can shift later on and how we project players. So I am stressed, and I'm stressed just because I'm looking at what we do behind the scenes, and Andy, Mike, and Jason, we're kind of projecting this week, and we talk about each team. For DFS purposes, just get weird. Yeah, I'm with you. I'm not going to be playing a ton of cash. I also want to gear up for the playoffs. So I tell people this all the time. If there are certain slates that you don't love, like a 13-game slate is massive bets. Like I that already stresses me out because I think about the projections, the best plays. If you want to go a little bit less and save some of your bankroll for playoffs, that's great. If you just made a ton of money, which we'll talk about in a second, in best ball, you're like, this is free. It's on the house. I'm just going to, take the over on MVS this week.
Oh, MVS, he's chasing a little bit of money this week. We'll talk about that, I'm sure. Yes, also quick note on the slate context too. You mentioned it's 13 games. There's also the NFL did a pretty good job of kind of splitting up early and late window. Like usually it's annoying because it's we got 9 games in the early window and there's 3 in the late window, something like that, or 2 in the late window, which was the case this past week. They did a pretty good job splitting it up too. So if you feel overwhelmed by all the moving parts on a 13-game slate, You can play early only or the afternoon only slate. Or, man, I cannot imagine not playing some showdown Sunday night for Vikings and Lions, the game of the year, the 1 seed on the line, the first round bye, home field advantage, all on the line, and it's just a head-to-head matchup, which, and the NFL seeding it's kind of broken. Like, one of these teams is the 5 seed. How is that possible? Right? That just seems so wrong. So, a ton on the line, Sunday Night Football, so a very fun showdown slate this week as well.
Yeah, the total right now is at 57 and a half in some places, and I did some digging, and this is the highest closing total. So some games have opened in a different spot, but the highest total since 2020. It was a Dallas at Seattle game. Who could forget? And then I went back, and I forgot that DFS used to be a thing where we would play games in the 60s. Like that was the total in some of those 2018 games. With like that Rams-Chiefs game that we will probably remember forever with Jared Goff. So it's a different world. And I would just say, like, I think that is the one to go big because everybody is going to be watching this. And I do feel bad about the loser, though, because they're going to have to go likely to Tampa Bay. And I think that the Bucs are actually a sneaky 4 seed. And they're really fun to root for. I'm not, like, as a Falcons fan, I hate it. But as somebody who looks at football, like the Bucs are fun, man.
Yeah, they're frisky. They are fun. There's always one wild card team that kind of surprises you. It does kind of feel like that could be the team this year. But I mean, whatever it is, the Lions or the Vikings in that game, certainly going to be favored, I think, by a decent margin in that wild card round. But we'll talk about it when we get there next week when the wild card preview starts. So yeah, man, it should be a ton of fun. I got to ask though, before we move on from this little intro here, Sunday Night Football. Everybody's watching. Everybody wants points. I'm seeing 58 in the market in some spots.
Well, you know what that means.
I mean, is the model, is it giving you some signal here? Are we taking the under?
Just everybody's excited, and I'm just rooting for bad football.
Kyle's at home on Sunday night. Great main slate, just hanging with the fam, puts the game on. He plays both DSTs and Showdown, both kickers. He just bets the under. He's the only one rooting for bad football on Sunday night.
I was talking to my wife about some of the scenarios I needed for my home league and for best ball and everything else. She goes, okay, so what are we supposed to root for? I go, nothing. We want nothing to happen. We want this to be the worst thing that's ever happened. It was not on Sunday night or on Monday Night Football.
Yeah, it was a very exciting game, I thought, Monday Night Football. So yeah, we'll talk about some of that today.
Yeah, there's an emotional aspect. I won't go too much into it. I'll just say I am a shell of myself right now. I'm a sad puppy.
I don't even want to know what the Whoop strain situation is for you, Kyle. Through the roof, I imagine.
Not a sponsor, but I do love my Whoop. Yeah, let's just say this home league that I've talked about many, many a times, made the playoffs 9 out of 10 years. I still have not won my first championship in that league. 0-3 in the title game. And of course, the most poetic part is that I lost because of Jameson freaking Williams.
As soon as the first touchdown happened, I had a sinking feeling in my stomach for you, Kyle. Because I know you told me before, and for those who aren't aware, Kyle had a very fun sweat going for best ball as well. But you told me before, you're like, if I lose my home league, like, I'm going to die inside. Like, this means so much more to me.
I could win the Millie Maker, and this home league means more.
Well, I would disagree with that personally, but I wouldn't mind a million. But when I saw the JMO first touchdown, it was like, ooh, baby. So I'm sorry, dude. It's a good learning experience. Puts more calluses on you. Toughen up. I do think people ask us all the time, and they kind of give us a hard time. They're like, how can you even give advice if you've never won your home league? I think that is the funniest thing ever. So, Kyle, how can you even show your face today if you haven't won your home league?
I feel that, everybody in my league just rails on me. Just that I am the one that gets to talk about this for a living. But I still love that league. It's how I got started, okay? I made a podcast for that league, and I would put it out once a week. I'd interview everybody. I mean, it was like my second job for a while. And then out of that is how I started doing stuff with the Fantasy Footballers. So it has a special place in my heart, and I love that league. But we did have some listeners that, they are just backing up the trucks right now and just dumping loads of cash. Money, 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 money. I thought this would be the best way to end this year, because this is the last episode of 2024. We will never, ever do an episode ever again in 2024. Never let it be said.
What a year.
It was a good year, man. And we had some listeners. I'm sure lots of people have gotten to be a part of this segment over the year. And these are just a couple that we saw in Discord that we want to celebrate with you. If there's more, we love to, celebrate with you again. But yeah, I mean, just some awesome winners. And then also this week, you get all the best ball teams that kind of come in. So I placed 11th in the Hound Dog, and I dropped about 6 spots because of Ricky Pearsall. Did not see that coming. But
Slick Rick.
Dude, Ricky Pearsall and Jameson Williams did not think they would be the ones to KO me.
You know, it's funny. I saw an interview. So if you missed last week's game, he got chewed out on the sideline by the wide receivers coach because I think it was 2 penalties on the same drive, like crucial penalties on the same drive for like illegal formation or something. So he's getting chewed out in week 16 by the wide receivers coach. Then I saw a quote from Purdy this week, and he was talking about, Ricky Pearsall can beat man coverage. And what do the Lions do?
Yep.
They play a ton of man. So when I saw that stuff, Kyle, I didn't want to tell you ahead of time because I was like, ooh, it kind of feels like a big Ricky game is coming. So you should have played him at captain on that slate and hedged a little bit. But I want to give a shout out to my boy, Nick Bradley. He's a good friend from college days. He had a team that he needed Ricky Pearsall to have a big game to put up a first place score for 10K. So it had you sweating against Ricky. Nick needed Ricky. Our boy Chris, which we'll talk about here, needed George Kittle. So like I felt I didn't have anything, no skin in the game. I'm just living vicariously through all you guys. I felt like all of those things happening. So every play, I was half sad and half happy for all my friends.
It is wild that the players you need at the very end, like the only way I got there is Devonta Smith went off with Kenny Pickett and Tanner McKee. That's
as we all predicted back in August.
Yes. Jerry Jeudy decided at the very end, like, hey, DTR said, let's just keep throwing this dude 4-yard targets over and over and over again. They were just weak little things. So it was a fun little sweat. I will highlight some other people that won big. This first one is on Discord from Bernie Maine. It says, I'm the back-to-back champ, and this hit tonight. It's been a great year. And it looks like on a pick 6 on Monday night, he did a $15 entry that won over 300, including, I see some Jameson Williams love in there. I did hedge, by the way. I took Jameson Williams, his fantasy points, and so I went a little back last night just to make sure I emotionally did that. But I think best ball is the one that I want to highlight here the most. It's hard to realize, I think, from you and I, what our investment is over the summer and how it pays off. You just don't see it. And a lot of people are like, look what I'm doing in week 4. You're like, I don't care. Show me later on. Like that's all that matters. I think the best way to explain this is that we have paid off and other people have paid off their time mowing the lawn over the summer. It's worked.
I mean, we say it every summer. This is the goal of the show, to make your lawn care just so entertaining for the hour and 10 minutes that you have to mow your lawn. Do all that stuff, weed whack. Yeah, like it paid for itself here. So, I mean, if what are like the big lawn care companies out there, Kyle? Scott's.
Yeah.
If they want to maybe, the DMs are open. Maybe if they want to get a little airtime, just saying for next best ball summer. What's crazy? I'm so sick, Kyle. I already started thinking, I'm like, when does the big board drop for next year? Like, it literally was like the week before the Super Bowl last year, I think, or maybe 2 weeks before. So if you can't get enough best ball, good news. It's coming fast.
All right, so a couple of people I want to highlight. This one, I'm just going to read their name. I have the best balls. Won $3,700 in Best Ball Mania, which
let's go.
To advance in Best Ball Mania is basically insane. You have to keep going and win a bunch of DFS tournaments, essentially. Got to give props here. I mean, I'm going to hit the drop one more time here. One of our mainstays in our Discord, Saints to Death, won $65K in the big board, put up 194 points. He got third place. And Saints to Death was one of those people that said, Derrick Henry is going to be a league winner. I remember we did our league winners episode, and I even did a solo pod where I talked through Derrick Henry. And got to give some props here because held to his guns, won $65K. And anyway, just congrats on that because what a call that is.
Definitely. Yeah. And in a landscape, like it's easy in hindsight now to be like, oh, obviously you just needed, not this week necessarily, but across the course of the year, you needed, Saquon and Derrick Henry and all the best running back plays. But at the time, especially in like June, July, it was like, oh, those are terrible picks. Like you need the wide receivers here, right? That was like what the market was saying. And I do think at some point early in the year, that was probably true. But by the time we got to August, it was like, guys, why are we drafting, I don't know, fill in the wide receiver, going in the third round just because the wide receiver prices are so elevated. Our boy Saints to Death said, no, you need Derrick Henry in this range. So, and he was on that all summer. So congratulations. It's super fun when your conviction and your takes pay off in a big way. So yeah, 65K, thanks to the big dog is super fun. So congratulations, man. Super happy for you guys.
Yeah, and I think this is a great talking point here where the popular strategy, or the one that we talked about a lot, and everybody, you should have a portfolio of different teams you have, but it was, hey, go hero RB, go zero RB, and therefore you will be good. And to some degree, like my team that advanced, like my guys hit later on that were like Chase Brown types or Bucky Irving. Like those are the players that did help a lot of people advance. However, if those teams fail that are the hero RB teams, and you're in a massive tournament like this, you just create so much leverage of teams that just said, hey, like I had some teams I looked at, I was like, man, I was really banking on Pacheco to be my hero RB, or, to start off that way. And it's like, oh, well, those teams are dead. Like, let's say you had Brees and Pacheco. Those teams were just automatically dead, and you can create so much leverage. So that will be part of the offseason conversation. And I put this out in Discord. I think there's a lot of smart people in our Discord, and there's a lot of best ball stuff. So I'm excited to talk about that in the offseason too, and get to that. But one more here, and I definitely have to hit the drop for this one. Chris Cash, I got to say, man, you've been a part of this segment a couple times this year, and I DM'd you, and I thought, man, is this a really good year? He goes, oh, this is by far just an insane year. Chris placed third in the DK Millie for best ball. And that's something that you talked about for a while, that you thought that tournament, the buy-in and the fact that it goes 20 rounds, there's just a different feel than it is on Underdog. Players are going in different spots. And so Chris got third place. He was in first place heading in to Monday night, but finished third, got $715K. And I will let you read his tweet that he put out there, and Andy retweeted it. So it's out there in the ether.
Yeah, congratulations, Chris. I mean, what a season. Also, I think won 30K at some point in DFS along the way. So massive, massive season 2024 for Chris. Said, proud to be a member of the Foot Clan. Love rocking the logo. He's got our DFS and betting logo from the podcast because I stumbled upon your show years ago and it transformed how I look at fantasy football. Borg Betz do wonders for the best ball / DFS streets. I cannot thank them enough for their top-notch work. I was DMing with Chris, and I was just asking him, how did you get the team and what was the strategy and stuff? And he's like, honestly, and we were laughing together because Zach Ertz was on this team. And I said, imagine thinking Zach Ertz is the week 17 hammer you need. And he laughed and he said, the reason I took him, and he said I didn't like it at the time, was because Kyle always reminds us you cannot be dogmatic in your stances and your takes. And you don't know who's going to be the guy you need in week 17 or week 16. Adam Thielen popped off in week 17, right? And if you tell me in August, take this 33 or 34, however old he is, guy that's going to peak late in the season, I'd say, I don't really want that guy, but you just really don't know. So I think it's good to have player takes and player stances, but just correlating your lineup and hoping you run hot at the right time is really the best thing you can do in best ball. I'm not saying you can't take overweight or underweight stances, like Saints to Death had a ton of Derrick Henry for good reason, but just being open to the combinations of players you have, especially in these large field tournaments, I think is super important. And one area that I need to work on, I think, in best ball, because I definitely get a little bit too narrow-minded on players I'm taking. But yeah, congratulations, Chris, man. What an unbelievable season.
Yes. And I do like that point of when we look at player analysis and we have player takes, and I have my own, this is what I have, I want to be open to the fact that I could be wrong about a lot of things. But on top of that, it is just kind of seeing week to week, we talk about median outcomes and we're chasing these top 1% type of things that you can't put together. You needed a couple of different things to work. And so what we're trying to do in best ball and structure, we're trying to do in DFS is like, I'm just going to get a couple of things right. I mean, let's be honest. You need so many things to go right that are out of your control by other human beings who don't know you exist and are playing football and we're playing a fake game. So it is quite silly sometimes what we do when we try to prognosticate, but there are a couple things that we know, a couple of levers that we can pull about correlation and, you know, roster percentage and those types of things, or this is what the field is doing, so how can we change a little bit? So Zach Ertz, man.
As we said all summer, Zach Ertz is the pick you need in Week 17. He also said, too, on his team that he double stacked. He had all three quarterbacks stacked, and he had to bring back on all three of those quarterbacks to those teams for Week 17. So just maximizing the if I hit the right game, the ceiling outcome becomes more likely to be accessed, and you saw that here. So, really good lineup and definitely good correlation, and I think just hammering home the point of how to draft good best ball teams in a smart way.
I will basically take the next month to work through all of the data of, okay, here's, win rate players and here's what worked. And, Week 17 correlation, my anecdote from just experiencing this past week is Week 17 killed this year. I mean, it was just some monster scores. Even just like in the tournament I was playing, I was like, oh man, I'm hitting like 170 in my score. I'm feeling really good. And everybody else is like, nah, we're going to hit like 200. It's like, I mean, that's pretty wild on a half-point scoring system like Underdog.
For sure. And if you remember, even on the DFS preview this week of like a lot of backup quarterbacks are playing and, just the game totals were terrible. We kind of had said like, seems like it might be a bit of a low scoring slate. turns out it was not a low scoring slate. It was actually a massive slate for both DFS and Week 17. So yeah, very, very fun Week 17. It's always a good time of the year. Holidays, New Year's, fantasy championships, all that stuff. We love to celebrate with you guys.
I never really heard your analysis this past week about that Drew Lock was going to go off for 5 touchdowns. Like, where was that?
Drew Lock was max pain. We also had an under. I took it on pick 6 and in props on Drew Lock. Dude averaged like 20 yards per completion. He had like 4 completions for like 150 yards. And I was like, okay, well, close the laptop. We'll move on to Week 18.
Yep. No, I had a couple of things that didn't go. I did get a Cam Little over. That felt
Cam Little
great.
Showing out for the crew, man. Cam
Dude.
Little, he heard his name on the show and he's like, I got to kick some field goals today.
Okay, I know I have kicker bits. I talk about this a lot, and I'm being 100% serious here. So I think Cam Little is like going to be a great all-time kicker. That's my thought.
Wow, that's a take. Are we talking like next Justin Tucker?
He's on a crappy team. So
that's true. So you're telling me that I need to go out and get a signed Cam Little rookie card right now?
Yeah.
If that even exists.
I'm gonna go look it up. I'm gonna take some of my winnings and go buy a Cam Little signed card. That's what I'm gonna go do
great.
during
That
this
is great.
break. I'm gonna take a break. We'll be right back.
Straight cash, homie.
I've done a little research. I'm looking on eBay right now. Not a lot out there. Oh, here it is. A Cam Little. It's just a card. It's like $9. It's not even signed.
What an investment, Kyle. I mean, that is an opportunity right there.
That's true. All right. Well, I'll get a signed football or something. He's a dude. All right. So we're going to quickly kind of review cash from this past week. And I'll just say it didn't go great for me. And that's because I had some Green Bay players and Green Bay pass catchers that I would just say that was maybe one of the most disappointing parts of the weekend is seeing that how the Packers game played out. They only lost by 2, but it did not feel like the offense was functioning at all. So I played a lineup that did not do so well. I've had a rough last couple of cash slates for me. And I think a lot of my like I played Flacco, who was fine at his role. I played a lot of the chalk stuff everywhere else, but man, Green Bay just killed me.
Yeah, I thought it was the slate changed quite a bit once we got the news that Anthony Richardson was definitely downgraded. So you got a potentially cheap Flacco. We also got Tajay Spears on Saturday to open up as a play with Tony Pollard getting ruled out. And because of the Flacco news, then you get interest in Josh Downs and Michael Pittman. So the slate changed a ton, especially for cash games. So yeah, I didn't have a great week. I think I was 4.5 points off the cash line, which is, I've always said I'd rather just get crushed than be that close. It's like way more painful. But not a great week for me. I played a Darnold team, had Saquon and Bucky, who I thought Bucky was a must to have this week. And then at wide receiver, I did pay down for Josh Downs to be able to get up to Justin Jefferson. So like going into the slate with Barkley and Jefferson in the same lineup just felt so strong. Both guys were fine, but at their salary definitely didn't help. And then Josh Downs was a complete bust. So yeah, interesting slate for cash. Not the best for us, but it is what it is.
Yeah, I thought some of the plays that were obvious got played. Spears, Bucky. If you wanted to play Wicks and punt with him, Wicks was fine of those because of his price point, but it kind of came down to, did you play someone like Brian Thomas or did you not? And I have been projecting Brian Thomas quite well. I haven't been playing him like a dumb idiot.
He's so good, man. He's on pace right now for not historic as far as like counting stats, but like yards per outrun, targets per outrun, like the stuff that us nerds care about in Dynasty. I mean, where do you think he goes next year in best ball / redraft leagues? Like,
he's going to be a second round pick.
Yeah, I was saying like pick 16-ish kind of feels like the sweet spot. Yeah, he's great. He's fantastic. All the LSU boys this past weekend, Kyle, balled out, kind of, except for Justin Jefferson. But you know who did?
Terrace Marshall Jr.
Sure did. What's hilarious is I was doing a little bit of props research ahead of week 17, and I saw on the Raiders game, it's like Terrace Marshall Jr., 4.5 yards. It's like, I didn't even know he played for them. But yeah, I was like, 5 yards. Can TMJ do that? I looked at his route data and his target shares, and I was like, kind of feels like a good airball opportunity here. But TMJ and the other LSU
Did he stick it
goats,
to you?
He stuck it.
Yes.
I didn't bet it, but
okay.
I didn't take it. And of course, I saw him make that huge play. Gets up on the sideline. He's flexing, as TMJ does. So yeah, Neighbors, Brian Thomas Jr., Jamar Chase, all the goats, they all showed out. TMJ.
Yeah, I put out a Brian Thomas Jr. tweet that was Andy back in the summer that we were going through projections for the UDK and we were going through the Jaguars, and him and Mike on the show are talking through stuff. And just so you guys know, when we talk about, when they're on the show and they give their projections, they don't like to give them out because that's part of our product and stuff. But like sometimes they'll just be like, hey, this is what I have this player projected for. And Andy just casually says like, I really like Brian Thomas Jr. this year. I think 1,200 yards. And I remember on that show just being floored, like, Andy, are you really sure? Like, do you want to say this publicly that Brian Thomas Jr., a rookie, is probably going to be third or fourth on his team in targets? Like, do you really think he's going to go for 1,200 yards? And I mean, that's smash. That was an absolute smash. And I wish I would have taken more of him in best ball.
Yeah, I had a ton of him this year. I thought it was a sweet spot.
Andy.
I listened to Andy. The sweet spot for archetypes of like the upside case of where he goes. Like, there's certain players that go in certain pockets of best ball drafts where you're like, this feels too cheap for the potential outcome that could exist. And for a guy like Brian Thomas, I thought that was massive. So yeah, I thought Brian Thomas Jr. was an awesome pick this past year. I think he's a stud. I think he's gonna be a star in this league. And Andy has this like weird ability to predict these things. Like, nobody was like, Brian Thomas Jr. is a bad player because he went in the first round. He had a lot of pedigree and stuff. But like, he just had conviction on that. And like, a couple weeks ago, he's like, Jalen McMillan did nothing. He's like, he's gonna score a touchdown this weekend. Okay, dude, sounds good. Like, I don't know what it is, but and then Chig, he just has this like innate ability to put his hand in the dirt, Kyle, buckle the chin strap, and just no ball.
See, I can't do that. I'm the dude that's like, hey, Chig is the piece you need 2 years ago.
Hey, don't let Chig get hot, okay? 3 straight weeks. Double-digit DK points.
Well, he's a star, man. He's a yak master. I do want to give a shout out to JJ Zacharyson because I think Brian Thomas Jr. was his like MVP this year. So
I think that's correct. Yep.
So last little thing, and then we're going to get into the Week 18 slate. Is there is so much to talk about, and the season is about to be over. Like, my brain, I feel really tired emotionally from yesterday, but I feel really excited about offseason because I feel like there's just this wealth of different angles for us to talk about when it comes to strategy, DFS, NFL draft betting, prospect stuff. That's what's crazy about football is that it is the one sport, and I love baseball, and I'm cool with NBA. Like I'm cool with the other sports, but football is this weird year-round thing where if you're on board with us, Betz and I keep recording. We take a little break right after the Super Bowl, but then we're right back in March, and you and I just start going to town. So I don't know. Are you kind of excited to dig into like, oh wow, there's a lot of info here?
Yeah, I actually really like the offseason. I mean, the in-season grind of like week to week, the same content and articles and analysis and trying to win in DFS is super fun, and I'll always love that. But the offseason is really fun because you get to just like reset, kind of digest the information that you just got for 4+ months. Playoff DFS is a completely different animal, right? Then we, like you said, we kind of turn our attention a little bit more to like the dynasty lens, rookie analysis, that type of stuff, especially on the Dynasty podcast. And all of that goes into like our team level analysis as well, which is in the UDK Plus as part of the Dynasty Pass. Super, super valuable resource that gives you an idea of like how we think these teams could perform across the 2025 season. So yeah, I love it. Just a different, type of feel to it and different analysis, but very fun. And I'm definitely excited to get into some of that stuff.
Sounds like you are cool with your job.
The bosses are like, it's kind of a grind every day to show up for those guys, but otherwise the work is great.
It is pretty fun what we get to do.
State of the main slate.
Each week we refer to the lines at DraftKings Sportsbook. It's where Betz and I play. You can go to sportsbook.draftkings.com. And before we get into week 18, let's check in on a wager that I thought was dead. I thought it was done. We got it at plus odds. And it is the Texans under 9.5 wins. They've decided that they've wanted to fart around a little bit, and that's totally fine. They laid an egg on Christmas. I mean, what a painful game to watch. And it kind of comes down to this right now. The Texans are a 1-point road dog. D'Amico Ryans gave some really cryptic information. Like, how did you read that where he was like, hey, we're going to play our starters, but like, we'll see how it goes?
Yeah, I was going to say, where's the direct quote? I had it somewhere. Basically, he was like, everybody's got to be ready to go. Here it is. Everybody has to be ready to go, and we'll see how the game goes. It's like, okay, that's not helpful. The line was Tennessee -4 prior to that. I wouldn't even call it news, but prior to that quote, it's now, like you said, Tennessee -1. So I think Stroud starts and plays, and maybe they just want to get some rhythm because, like you said, the offense looked abysmal. Actually, the last couple of weeks, but really this past week against the Ravens, they just got throttled in that game. So maybe they just want to have him, kind of like a preseason game, maybe play a quarter and a half, 2 quarters, something like that, and then get the backups in there because, yeah, they're hosting a playoff game next week, right? So they got some stuff to worry about as well. But yeah, I thought it was interesting, and hopefully it's very minimal time for CJ Stroud in there because, like you said, we have the under 9.5 at plus 122. I know a lot of listeners had that as well as part of our win totals bets. Week 18, Kyle, we're relying on some combination. We don't know who's starting. They've said both will play. Some combination of Mason Rudolph and Will Levis to cash this bet. I mean, how does this lose?
Do you think we see the pride of Norcross, Georgia, Davis Mills in this game?
I think at some point we do.
Okay. Yeah, some would call him great. I would love to see him and then us hit this under. All right, so Betz and I are going to break this up a little differently than how we normally do. It's not a normal slate. Hopefully you understand that. We have an article on the site. It is titled Week 18 Playoff Motivation and Incentives. You can Google it if you want to. But basically, we walk through all of the teams and say, here's what they need to do. Here's the analysis. And then we also give some player incentives. So let's talk about that because you get into the nitty gritty already on a Tuesday of here's my player take of what the Dolphins will do. It doesn't really matter. We're still waiting on Tua news. So before we get into player stuff, let's walk through some of this. So for the AFC, let's start there. The Chiefs, they've already secured the 1 seed. Seems like they're going to be resting everybody. The Broncos are 10-point favorites. The Broncos are win and get in. So is that one of those things where like, hey, you can play your Broncos and have a little bit more confidence here?
For sure, yeah. Broncos have to win to make the postseason. So we will project Bo Nix, Cortland Sutton, those guys as usual, and you're probably getting backups on both sides of the ball for KC. Peter Schrager already reported Sunday morning this past week that Carson Wentz is going to start.
Your boy.
But they probably will, Carson Wentz, baby, week 18. But they will call up their third string quarterback off the practice squad as well. So no Mahomes, no Kelsey, no Hopkins, like those guys. I'd be shocked if any of them played at all. Isaiah Pacheco is battling a rib injury, so he won't play. Chris Jones is battling a calf injury. He won't play. So yeah, Bo Nix will project very well as a 10-point favorite against KC backups. So yes, KC, no motivation. They will rest starters.
I did have a Cortland Sutton incentive that I found in his contract. He needs 82 receiving yards to earn an additional $500K. So not bad, because basically he had in his contract he needs 1,065 receiving yards, and Denver has to improve on their total points. They did do that. So 82 receiving yards. We'll see what the line is when it comes out. That's an interesting one. Like
for sure,
to kind of
put very realistic for him too.
Yeah. I also thought this. Who is the backup KC wide receiver that we need to be targeting? Like, we're gonna get some like Justin Ross. Sky Moore's still hurt, I think. Yeah, he has an abdomen injury, but I wanted to play Sky Moore.
What's funny is so they will rest starters, and this is true for other teams too. But you can't rest everybody, right? Because you just run out of guys on the active roster. So I wouldn't be surprised if, I don't know, they still have Justin Watson out there for part of the game or something.
Because
you're still going to see some. He's a gamer. You're still going to see some guys that but in general, it's hard to project the Chiefs this week very well.
All right, so moving down a little bit, the Bills, they've locked up the 2 seed, and then McDermott kind of came out and said, hey, we're going to keep Josh Allen's start streak alive. He's at 114 consecutive starts, so this is more of hey, just do it. Matt Collins has a couple incentives here. He needs 2 more receptions for additional $50K and 72 receiving yards. Matt Collins has weird games, so maybe it happens. Dawson Knox also has to stay at 60% snaps, and he can earn $250K. So that one's kind of a fun one. You can't really do much with that with DFS, but it seems like he needs to stay on the field. But Bills seem pretty straightforward, and you're not going to be banking on Josh Allen. You might get a quarter.
Yeah, if that. I'd be surprised if it's even that much. They are barely favored against New England, which tells you a lot about which type of players are going to play in this game for Buffalo. So I think you'll see a lot of Mitch Trubisky. Hopefully we get more news throughout the week, but this is one situation where I think Mitch Trubisky will project well at his price, but it's can you even stack him is the question, because we don't know who to project for how much playing time and all that sort of stuff. So we will try to get all of that information throughout the week.
All right, so I think one of the tougher decisions this week, and this is for the Saturday slate, is the AFC North games. It's Cleveland at Baltimore. Baltimore is 17.5-point home favorite, which is wild. And then at night is the Bengals at the Steelers. The Bengals are in must-win territory. They still need a bunch of things to go right. They need Denver to lose. They need Miami to lose. But if you're playing the Saturday slate and you're playing this 2 game, which is fun, you're just all in on the AFC North, you just watch all of those. What was it? Hard Knocks in season is AFC North. You just watch all of those and binge.
It is. I have not seen any of that actually, but yes, that's what it is.
All right. So how would you handle this from a playing time perspective? Because Derrick Henry is 1 touchdown away. I'm sure Saints to Death knows this, but he gets $500K if he gets 1 more rushing touchdown.
Yeah. So the Ravens are interesting, right? In theory, there is a path where a miracle happens and they could lose this game. They're not going to lose this game. So right now they're in the top spot in the AFC North. They have not clinched the division, but they will lock up the number 3 seed if they win against the Browns. Again, 17.5-point home favorite. So they will win this game. They will lock up the 3 seed. And they can also make it if they, for some reason, happen to lose this game and the Steelers lose to the Bengals. But this is the first game. So the Ravens starters are going to be in the game, I think, for as long as they need to be. If it's the third quarter and they're up by, 14, or the fourth quarter and they're up by multiple scores, I think you are very likely to see backups in the game for the Ravens. So the projection is going to be tough because they need to win, but they're 17.5-point home favorites. So again, playing time is questionable for Baltimore here. Then in the night game, like you said, Steelers and Bengals. We know the Bengals are going to go out to play to win this game. They have to win if they want to have a chance. The way that they get knocked out of the playoffs is either with a loss or depending on what happens on Sunday. So they are not going to know any information about their motivation level until Sunday. So they're going to play this straight up as usual. The Steelers are interesting because they're now in second after their Christmas Day loss to the Chiefs. They need to win against Cincy and have the Ravens lose. As we just mentioned, it's highly unlikely the Ravens lose this game. So they will know before kickoff what their fate is as far as their seed. So it's basically like at that point, do they play starters anyway? Do they know that they have no hope of the division, so then they just rest starters? That's all TBD. But I think if you think about NFL teams and process throughout the week, it's kind of hard to like prep for if this, then that scenarios, right, and then just flip the script on Saturday at 6:00. So hard to say on Pittsburgh. I think they'll probably play it mostly straight up, but I wouldn't be surprised either way.
I mean, you already know what Russ is doing. He's got his helmet on right now, currently.
With the eye black. He sleeps in it.
He's just ready to go. There's only 2 players in the league that have their helmet on, chin strap, ready to go, even if they're on the sidelines. It's Russell Wilson and it's Kirk Cousins. That Sunday night game, he was ready to go in.
I texted you watching that game. I love Kirk, man. What a brutal end of season stretch here for him as a player and just the situation. End of life is how you said.
Yes.
But yeah, watching him on the sideline, clearly not going to play unless there's an injury to Penix. Helmet on, chin strap buckled. I mean, stay ready so you ain't got to get ready is what Kirk is thinking, right?
He's just hyped up.
I love that, man.
He's just hitting his helmet on the sidelines, just like hyped up with the boys. Oh, man. He used to be a part of the friend group, and then everyone's like, hey, yeah, Kirk, yeah, man, good to see you. We don't really hang out with you anymore. You're kind of old news. A quick question. This is totally unrelated to anything going on, but could I borrow $1 million?
Yeah, you need $1 million? What's up? I got it just laying around.
Okay, good, because I'm seeing Ravens money line is at minus 1650. We could make a cool $60,000 on this game.
Sounds like a value play to me.
All I know is there anybody who's going to have a worse end-of-year review, maybe Kirk Cousins, but than DTR? He's not good at his job.
I mean, he's helping the team improve their draft slot, right?
That was his task. That was like...
Yes, get in there, lose, and see you later.
They have the 3rd overall pick right now, so interesting. But man, DTR is so bad. So
it's not
historically
good.
Bad. Not just like, oh, he's kind of one of the worst in the league, like historically bad. All right, moving on from those Saturday games. We talked about the Texans. We talked about Broncos. The Chargers are interesting because right now they are currently favored by 5.5 on the road in Las Vegas. They can improve their seed. They can get to the 5 seed if the Steelers lose and they beat the Raiders. I think that would be advantageous for them, right? When they move up to and play the 4-5.
Right. So they've clinched with their win this past week, like you said. They're behind Pittsburgh in tiebreaker right now, but they could be the 5 seed if the Steelers lose and they beat the Raiders. So basically it's like they could go to 5 or be the 6 seed. How much does that matter to the team is the question mark. You really are thinking about who's your first game against in the wild card. That's kind of what they're thinking
Texans.
About, right? So yeah, if I was them, I would much rather play the Texans. No offense to Houston, but they've not played well for basically a month. You lose, Diggs, you lose Tank Dell. It's kind of been, Stroud's regressing. It's kind of been rough. So I would much rather play the Texans, which means the 5 seed does bring some motivation. So that's one to monitor. We'll see what Harbaugh has to say. If it's like anything with any of his pressers about any injuries, where he said all summer or all week, it's like, yeah, they're dealing with something. It's like, cool, buddy. That doesn't help anybody. I'm not sure we'll get a lot of info on him, but I think I'd project him to play it straight up, just given that wild card game against Houston looks, pretty appealing.
Yeah. I think it's really hard to say this is what I would do in this situation. Like last night, we would have said, oh, I wouldn't have played my starters if I was the Lions. And Dan Campbell said, I don't care about you and whatever you think is logical. And in hindsight, it looks fine now. It's totally fine, but you can work through those things all the time. Last couple of thoughts here is the Dolphins technically are still alive. They need the Broncos to lose. They play in the afternoon. So that one's tough because it's like they have to win, but things might change, but Denver and KC's at the same time. So I think all the starters will play. We don't know about Tua. And if it's not Tua, it's really hard to stack them up for fantasy purposes.
Yeah, like you said, they play at the same time as Denver and KC, so they're going to prep to play this as usual and hope for a miracle. They're going to hope for Carson Wentz to save the season.
It just wrecks everything.
Which is just fantastic. So yeah, the Dolphins, they need to win, and they also, like you said, need the Broncos to lose. So they're going to play it straight up. Tua's battling a hip injury. They said he'll go if he can, but it sounds like it's more serious than initially was led on. Obviously, last week was a must-win game and he sat, so this is a real injury for Tua. We're also waiting on Jalen Waddle news, who's missed the last 2 games with a knee injury.
Any other thoughts on AFC? I mean, we know some of the teams that are eliminated that you're going to project. Like, we're waiting on Drake May. Is he going to play for the Patriots? Are they going to sit him out a week? Is Aaron Rodgers going to show up to this season? We're still waiting on that. So anything else for the AFC?
They said Rodgers is playing, which is fun for us all again. So I think Rodgers plays. We're still waiting on Anthony Richardson. Colts obviously are knocked out last week, but on Monday, Steichen said as long as Richardson's healthy, he will start. He's dealing with back spasms and an injury there, so we'll see on him. But otherwise, no new updates as of this recording.
All right, let's take a quick break, and we'll be back with the NFC. We talked about it earlier. Vikings-Lions, the total has been bet up by crazy people. I mean, before Monday Night Football, it was at what, 52 and a half? So
52 and a half.
That is some hungry people saying this game's, I mean, that's just a wild total to bet up.
I can't wait for this game. It's going to be so fun.
I can't wait to take the under. Cannot wait. So the loser will be the 5 seed, and it's just sad that a 14-win team will have to go on the road to potentially the Mercedes-Benz. No, they're not going. I mean, the Falcons, they're going to be out, dude. Bucks are going to take care of business.
Yeah, let's talk about the NFC South first. I don't know if you want to put your own team out of their misery or if I should do it or what. But basically, this week we'll decide the 4 seed, which is the NFC South champion. Obviously, it's Falcons or Bucks. It's very simple for the Bucks. They win against the Saints, and they are the 4 seed and the champions. They can also get in if they happen to lose, and the Falcons lose to the Panthers. As for Atlanta, 8-8 after they farted around on Sunday Night Football. They are currently second in the division. They need to beat the Panthers, and they need the Bucks to lose. Spencer Rattler, can you save the day for Kyle's Falcons?
I just want to clarify something. You said they farted around. They farted around at the end of the 4th because they wanted to hold on to something. They wanted to hold on to their timeouts. But
so this is so frustrating. This is probably not the best spot for it, but like, how are these human beings that are selected, there's only 32 of them in the NFL as the head coach, like, your job is to manage this team and to understand how to operate timeouts, to conserve time when you need it and manage the game, make the right decisions on 3rd and 4th down and all that stuff. Like, it's hard. I get it. It's not that hard, man. Like, how do you not call timeout with the clock ticking down to 15 seconds or whatever it is on a potentially game-winning drive to save your season? So, Raheem Morris, you're on notice.
I have a solution. It just dawned on me. This team needs some help in analytics. Maybe they need somebody in spreadsheets, somebody that loves to conditionally format. And there could be somebody in the area that looks at this stuff sometimes that could give them an opinion that, yes, may have a little bit of bias sometimes with certain players from their team, but I feel like we could find a solution out there. And I would have to give my 2-week notice, of course, for this job that we currently have, but I feel like I know where the building is. Like, I know where to show up.
So when we take our break right after the Super Bowl, it's like usually a month or so for listeners. If Kyle does not come back after that break, you'll know where he's at in his career. And I wouldn't hate it, Kyle, if you were the Atlanta Falcons analytics guy. That'd be kind of cool.
They do have analytics staff. I can't remember his name right now, but it's just we could do better.
Certainly. Did you watch any of the Chargers game on Saturday? Chargers and Patriots?
Oh yeah, I watched the whole game because I was lad all day.
I thought Ross Tucker did a great job explaining, because like analytics it's so funny how in the NFL world it's like this hot debate of like, are you pro, are you anti, how much? It's like, it's really simple. And he put it in a great way. He was like, analytics is like just probability based, decisions. And if you make decisions that are in your favor that help you win the game, it's a good choice to do. But like people are just so against it. So yeah, man. But yeah, the timeout management there was just truly, truly brutal.
Yeah, I mean, I'm going to put you on blast. Tim Burbinich, you're the game management and passing game specialist.
Come on, Tim.
It's a great guy, probably has a family, it's fine.
All right, what we're talking about?
Okay. Oh, we talked about NFC South. If you wanted to just place money on Bucks money line, I mean, they're going to roll at home against, I think Spencer Rattler's right above DTR.
They're not great. Yeah, so the short story here is for DFS, Bucks will play their starters as usual. Falcons will play their starters as usual.
Yeah, I think you can have a lot of confidence in Baker, who I think is priced appropriately and in a good spot. Moving down, the Rams, they're locked in. They're going to be the 3 or 4 seed. They are 3-point home dogs. That's a game that's going to be interesting to figure out. We'll probably get more and more information about the Rams and about Sean McVay and how he wants to do stuff. Props to Sean McVay, another Georgia boy, and what an awesome coaching job they've done. So I think Rams will be one that you will find information later on in the week of what he wants to do, or I think they'll get a couple of drives and then be done. So
yeah, I think they rest. We've seen this scenario play out actually as early or as recent as last year. If you remember in Week 18 last year, they couldn't really improve their seed. I think it was beyond the 5 or 6 seed off the top of my head, but Puka was very close to the record, and they were like, let's go get Puka the record, and then everybody sit down. So yeah, I don't think a lot of guys are playing here. They've clinched the division. They can't get to the 2 seed, so they're locked into either 3rd or 4th seed, depending on what happens here. And Sean McVay historically has rested, so I do expect Stafford, Kyron, Puka, Kupp, all the names that we love. I expect them to play very little, if at all.
Commanders are interesting because they're locked in. They're going to be the 6 or 7 seed. Dan Quinn said, though, that he wants to play. I mean, Dan Quinn's just like Dan Campbell, the Dans. We're playing our dudes. They're 4-point road favorites against the Cowboys, who are basically just like, can we end this season? We're done. It's over. How are you handling the Commanders, though? Because they don't have a ton of motivation, but I think there is a big difference in who they get to play in the first round.
Yeah, for sure. So yeah, they're either the 6 or the 7 seed, which doesn't sound like a lot because either way you're going on the road here in the wild card round. But it's basically like, do you go and play the Eagles, obviously a division rival who you've played twice this year, or do you go and play potentially the Rams? Neither matchup is easy, obviously, but I think just given the difficult scenario of playing a divisional opponent a third time, my guess is they'd probably prefer to play the Rams, but that's just a guess on my part. So yeah, they've said they'll play it straight up and try to hold on to the 6th seed. So as of now, I think we have every reason to believe them until we hear otherwise.
All right, last one here is the Packers. They're locked in, 6 or 7 seed. They're 9.5-point favorites. I feel like that line is a little funny because we don't actually know what the Packers will do because they just don't have a ton to gain. So I don't know. I feel like my early read, because I'm a sides and totals guy, it's a little off.
Back in Caleb Williams in Week 18. What could go wrong?
If you were to ask me, I'm taking the Bears plus 9.5.
Okay. All right, Kyle. Easy, buddy. Yeah, it's hard to say. We haven't gotten news out of Green Bay on this scenario, but like you said, they can't get any higher than the 6th seed. So in theory, kind of the same conversation. It's like they probably would prefer not to go on the road and play the Eagles if they could help it. But the only way that they can get up there is if the Commanders lose and they win. So they need 2 things to go right. So we'll wait on Packers news and keep monitoring throughout the week.
All right, so we're going to talk real quickly about some different angles, or just there's a couple of games that we feel like we can be most confident in this week because 13 games, tons of scenarios. We just walked through a ton of them. And like I mentioned, the article's on the site if you need to go back through. I went back and looked at Week 18 last year. The number 1 quarterback was Derek Carr. The number 2 quarterback, though, Carson Wentz. So
Week 18, baby, that's Carson's week.
I know. Hold on to that. Nick Mullins was QB5. Ah, man, I wish we had some Nick Mullins. Like, I wish I had that type of quarterback to be able to just say, I'm going to chuck it. I'm going to tell you exactly what I'm going to do. I guess that's Mac Jones these days, dude. Guy's got swag.
I guess so.
Okay, so there's a lot of different angles to take here. I think the two games that we can have the most confidence in, Carolina at Atlanta is a good spot. Atlanta's an 8.5-point favorite. You know they're going to be playing their starters. And Canales said, hey, we're going to play our starters too. The Panthers have shown some fight in the over-unders at 47.5. So the Panthers' options are still too cheap to look at. And then this is a great spot for Bijan at home against the worst run defense in the league.
For sure. Yeah, I love that game. Also in a dome. I mean, Kyle, as anybody would know, that building is going to be electric about a potential win and in situation with a loss, of course, from the Bucs, but must-win game. So yeah, it makes sense. I do think Bryce Young plays normal snaps and reps, and Adam Thielen and all the guys we've been projecting as is. So both guys, I think, are both teams, I should say, will project quite well. It's the highest total on the slate.
All right, the other game we want to highlight, I mean, other than you can have some confidence in Buccaneers players, and we'll talk about that game probably more later on in the week, is Jacksonville at Indianapolis. Two teams that are out, but it's a dome matchup, and Jacksonville's quietly been a really fun team for DFS. Remember a couple weeks ago, we talked about Jacksonville and the Jets. Last week, it was Jacksonville and the Titans. There's a lot of fun options here, and I think the main thing is that we saw how bad the Colts defense can be, and then we know that Jacksonville is just a horrendous unit as well.
Totally. Another dome game as well, which in January does matter. This is at Indy. And the 46 total is, I mean, on this slate is very good. A lot of these games are down in the 30s or low 40s. So it's totally a game stack situation that if you wanted to get into, you could. Josh Downs and Michael Pittman will both project very well again at their price tag, which is still too cheap if Joe Flacco is the starter. So we're waiting on that news, of course. But yeah, Jonathan Taylor's in a great spot. Brian Thomas Jr. once again against the perimeter corners of the Colts in a great spot. So definitely excited about this Jacksonville Indy game for DFS.
All right, let's highlight one more thing.
Salary standouts.
Betz and I are going to throw a couple of wild haymakers here on a Tuesday. And maybe our conversation changes when this podcast comes out on Friday, because it'll be a new year. 2025, I might be a completely different person. I might have a new persona. I might be somebody. Have you seen our buddy Pete Overzet, who helped you do an episode earlier this year? Have you seen how he's rebranded himself?
Oh, for cash games this week?
He's a cash game guy now.
I respect it. I respect the grind.
I just love that. I mean, Pete's like, his niche in fantasy football world is being able to blend analytics, inside stuff with jokes and just great humor. But I just love hey, this is kind of where we've lived forever as cash. And there is a silly part of cash too. But I love that Pete's, he's a new dude. It's not even 2025 yet.
Pete, just tag us next time, dude. Okay, you don't have to do this bit making fun of us without our names. We know you're making fun of us right now.
Yeah, I mean, if you want to challenge me, in the streets, in the lobby, I'm sitting there. I'm just handing stuff out. The last couple of weeks, I've just been handing out money for free if anybody wants it.
Yeah, everybody play Kyle's head-to-heads. Right now, it's free money. I might even scoop Kyle's head-to-heads.
I cannot wait to we're going to do some head-to-head stuff when we get to the playoffs. And that's where one or two guys we get different. We'll do some head-to-head lineups. We'll bring back some Battle Royale when we get to the playoffs. So here's a couple players that we want you to put on your radar. Obviously, a lot can change. But at quarterback this week, I mentioned Baker. I think he's my favorite at 7K earlier in the week just because you can trust what he's doing. I mean, the type of season he's put up, 4,300, about to hit 40 passing touchdowns, and he's has a 72% completion rate. Only Drew Brees has ever done that in a season. So think about vintage Drew Brees. That's what we're getting from Baker Mayfield. And he's at home. They're in a must-win situation. I think he's my favorite at 7K.
Definitely. No question about motivation, playing time, any of that stuff. It's an awesome matchup, against the Saints. It's going to project quite well. They've got a very healthy team total. So, yeah, I like Baker as well. Jaden Daniels does have a ceiling that I think is worth chasing, as we saw on Sunday night. But it's one of those, how much does he play situation? So I think Jaden, for me, is more of a tournament play. I like Baker a lot for cash. If you get Flacco against the Jaguars again, totally in play at 5,400. I will also throw out as a just monitor. This might be a sneaky kind of fun nasty boy play. Brock Purdy banged up his elbow on Monday Night Football. And the Pastronaut, Josh Dobbs, as 4K against the Cardinals.
I'm kind of okay with that. He's always been a fun player.
He runs? Yeah. I mean, assuming you have the other guys healthy, Kittle, Debo, Ricky, Jennings, like it's a pretty solid skill group too. So yeah, Josh Dobbs will be very interesting at 4K.
And I need to create a drop for this. I realize at this point, but he's also a Georgia boy. So yeah.
You're the worst.
I know. It's basically, did they grow up there? Were they born there? Did they go to college there? There's a lot of people. It's a big football state. It's a big deal.
If you've ever driven through the state, I mean, that counts.
There you go. Guys, people sleep on Georgia, and maybe it's because Jason had no clue where it actually was on a map.
Really?
You know, like I question, Jason is like, he calls himself an idiot savant sometimes because he's a genius about a lot of things and business stuff. And there are some things that he is just completely clueless of, and geography is one of them. He did not know that Georgia had a coast.
Wow, really? That's not good.
He thought we were basically Alabama, which, hey, Alabama's fine too. Not make fun of it, but come on. This is a nice little Atlantic coast.
Debatable.
Okay. All right, so Josh Dobbs 4K, you can go there. At running back, our boy Bucky Irving is now priced up to the point where we go, wow, this is very different than the dude we were playing in 6K. He's 7.7 at home. Once again, we're going to be talking about Bucks this week. Isaac Guerrero, who I thought looked pretty good against the Lions, he's 5.9. It's another situation where they're going to end the year with a losing record, but I think it's a really great spot for him. He's under 6K. He looks great. And then you have the guy known as Michael Carter at 4.7 here if James Conner doesn't play.
Correct. Yeah, Michael Carter, 4.7, just really stupid, cheap price tag for a guy who could touch the ball 15 plus times. Last week when Conner played but then left against the Rams, he carried the ball 13 times, also had 2 targets. So you could do worse at 4,700. And the Niners run D, no, he's not Jahmyr Gibbs, obviously, but the Niners run D has really struggled in recent weeks. You saw that on Monday night.
Yeah, we'll probably get to some other cheaper plays that open up later on in the week that we can go, okay, you can have some confidence in this player. We'll find some backups. At wide receiver, we're going to keep talking about Brian Thomas Jr. I think I might actually play him this week after talking him up for like a month.
Can't wait. It's going to be great. This is going to be his first down game in a month.
Oh,
just
easily.
Because he played him.
Oh, dude, yeah, he's not even going to play. Brian Thomas Jr., the only other rookies with 1,210 receiving touchdowns in a season. Randy Moss, Odell Beckham Jr., Jamar Chase, and Brian Thomas Jr. I think needs like 20 yards, something like that, to hit the milestone. 21.
He's good. He's very good.
He's great. So you can have confidence in Brian Thomas Jr. Drake London is 6.5. I feel like Drake London hasn't shown a wild ceiling this year, and it's kind of been tamed with the way the offense is functioning, but I thought he looked good with Penix overall. Like, I mean, there was a couple of miscommunications, but I thought he looked really, really good. He's going to see a huge target share in a must-win game. And then talk to me about the Colts option, because I think we have Colts quarterbacks circled this week. Is it A-Rich? Is it Flacco? Last week, it was our boy Pitty City, who, I don't know if you know this, he went over the hundo mark. We built this city. That was nice to see. Alec Pierce went over the 100-yard mark for the 3rd time this year, which is hilarious to think about. That's who you needed in best ball. And then Josh Downs let me down in cash this past week. I played Josh Downs.
Me too.
And it was so painful, man.
And I think they'll project just as well this week.
I'm going to go
obviously
back,
not. I'm so back. Obviously not the same price tags, but they are only up a couple $100. So Downs is 5,300, Michael Pittman 5,200. Their projection will change a ton if it's Anthony Richardson, whose completion line is usually around like 13.5 on books. Where with Flacco, we know he'll chuck. So it depends on who's starting at quarterback, but if it's Flacco, both those guys again will project well. The concerning thing about Downs, and I don't want to read into this too much from like a one game sample, like was it a fluke, all that sort of thing, because he's crushed historically when Flacco has played. He didn't really play a ton in 2 wide receiver sets. It was Pierce and Pittman, and they were having a ton of success with Jonathan Taylor running the ball, so they kept those heavy sets in those heavy formations. So that's one thing to consider. But again, both guys I think should make your player pool if it's Joe Flacco.
Yeah, I think Malik Neighbors is another name that you should just circle. If you just want pure targets, pure volume, he has 160 plus on the season. Yeah, it's not hard to click his name when you look at target share, air yard share, all those things. You can go right back there because Drew Lock is now one of the greats in the league. At tight end, we're back. It's Chig Okonkwo, 3.8. He's not priced up enough. The Titans are now favored. I think Chig is just going to hit a nice little sweet spot for us once again. If you wanted to pay up, Brock Bowers does have some incentives in front of him. If you want to go there, let's see. He needs 9 receptions to break Zach Ertz's all-time record for tight end receptions in a season. So does that factor in at all for you?
Not a ton. I do think, and I played him a decent clip last week in GPPs. It obviously didn't work out, but just whenever the field in cash games or, in projections, like is zooming in on one price point at tight end where we know the failure rate is so high. Like this past week, it was our boy Payne Durham bringing the pain.
I was proud of him.
Yeah, he did. He did what he had to do. Payne Durham, and Chig again, and Jake Ferguson. It's like we know these guys could fail anytime they take the field, but Brock Bowers is a different way to play it. So I feel the same this week about tournaments where I probably will spend down at cash, but in tournaments, just to get a different combination of salary allocation and a guy that could literally break the slate, that to me is very interesting in tournaments.
All right, let's go to defense and finish out here. If you want to play the Broncos and just pay up and say, hey, the Chiefs are resting their starters, you can do that against Carson Wentz, who is a Week 18 killer. So there's that. You just got to weigh those two things together. The Cardinals at home against a 49ers team that probably will be without Brock Purdy looks fine. And then you have the Jets here listed against Pro Bowler Tyler Huntley.
Correct. Yeah, the Jets 2,600. The Jets defense has been abysmal this year, but 2,600 in cash games, you could certainly do worse. I also don't think it's the absolute craziest thing in the world to play someone like the Giants at 2,400 if it's Tanner McKee, for the Eagles or something. So we'll probably just be picking on backup quarterbacks in cash and hoping for the best.
How did that feel that your third string quarterback was balling out?
Pretty good. I don't know much about Tanner McKee, but there's people on the internet that apparently think he's decently good, like could be a backup in the league type of thing. So yeah, it was fun to see him have a nice little moment. Did you see A.J. Brown chuck his first ever touchdown pass ball into the stands? That was very funny.
No, Tanner McKee actually had some good numbers at Stanford. I remember in our prospect evaluation, like, okay, well, maybe he's a mid-round pick and just went to the wrong landing spot. But he's 6'6". So kind of do whatever you want with that. If you want to play with us, go to ballersdfs.com. It will direct you to our DraftKings League, Fantasy Footballers DFS, Borg, and Betz. You can join the league, enter a contest, and we have a lot of contests coming up for playoff DFS, and we'll probably throw some out for the AFC North Saturday battles as well. Betz, sign us off for the very last time of 2024.
What a year, man. Very fun season with all you guys. Last Tuesday show of the year. Next week we go to one show per week, but we'll be back on Friday as usual to preview the main slate and turn the page to 2025. Congratulations to all the champions out there, and we will see you next year.
Thank you for listening to another edition of the Fantasy Footballers DFS and Betting Podcast. Don't forget to visit us on the web at thefantasyfootballers.com.